I think a lot of parents during lockdown, when they started getting the stuff sent back from the schools, that they went, oh golly, this actually isn't very interesting, or oh, this is what they're learning, and
Yes,
sort of started to see what was happening.
you're
um
right.
so I think, so I really started to see what was happening, and just when this isn't interesting, I mean that it wasn't really a political choice, it was more just this is boring, life is more than this, life is rich than this. And also, there are families who do this for decades. There are families who will educate, keep going with 6, 7, 8 children, and clearly enjoy this. Because if you didn't, you'd be sending your children to school, you wouldn't be continuing with that.
Yeah.
And it was with lockdown that I went, this homeschooling, this real kind of imposition of school in the private space, because everybody was online as well. You have this real problem of the public private space being merged, and not in a good way, not a healthy way. And so I really did want to step out of that and looked into proper kind of home education, homeschooling, American style, rather than that horrific lockdown thing. And just found this incredibly rich world where it was much more kind of family centric. It was much more going at the child's pace, going, following kind of real interests and passions. And there was just a richness there that it's just, it's so lacking. It's so lacking, certainly in the British education system. And I know that in North America, increasingly people are finding it over there. It, to discover this world was just fantastic. And so we took the leap. I think it was the summer term after the first lockdown. And here we are now, continuing on. So, yeah.
And did you notice, once you'd taken your kids out of
Yeah.
primary school, did
Yeah.
you notice a difference in their behavior and their...
They were just happy, like, yeah, just happier within themselves. There was much more physicality, and you're out and about much more. There's just so much more fresh air. There's so much more walking, and it's going to sound a bit sort of hippie, but certainly much more connection with nature. And
Yeah.
they were just much more joyful, really much more joyful. So as a family, it was a great blessing, a real blessing, and it's meant that we've been able to kind of protect them from a lot of the madness, quite frankly, that's been going on in the world outside. It's been a real privilege. Yeah.
So were your children still in school when they were putting on through the mask madness and all this stuff?
No. So when masks begin? That was the June last year, wasn't it? No. They were out. I had them out. Oh, probably before that began. So they've not experienced kind of any of the all the regular testing that's happening. They certainly haven't had their education disrupted in any way, shape, or form.
Brilliant.
I think also I had a real sense when the first lockdown began and then masks came in. I just went, oh my goodness, this isn't going to get any better. And I think we really need to hunker down. We need to give them as normal a life as possible, so that when and if life returns, they are going to be as centered and secure within themselves as we can make them.
Yeah. I went on one of the London marches and I bumped into you meet, it's a bit like being at Glastonbury. You make all sorts of friends as you wander around. And there was this kid I met who was about 14, and he was he was named after a prophet. I think he was called Elijah or Elisha, I can't remember, but he was a great kid. He was very savvy. And I said to him, well, what about the rest of your contemporaries? And he said, they're gone. And he absolutely meant it, that they'd sort of had their, well, I suppose they had the sort of brains sucked out of them. They'd lost the capacity to think independently. And this kid was homeschooled. So
I think what's been very, very interesting has been, I think what I have found sad in the acceptance of many families. Well, we have to do this, we have to wear the mask, we have to do the regular testing, all of this, and we just have to get on with it. There's been this real sense of there's not powerlessness. And I've seen that in parents. I've seen that in the children as well. it's been difficult to watch. It's been difficult to watch. Yeah, it has.
So, but I'm going to ask you in a moment about, you know, how
Yeah.
you go about homeschooling 4 kids. But
Yes.
tell me, I mean, you presumably got friends with children.
Yes.
How do they view you as a freak, or what? Or are they kind of
I
interested?
think a lot of the other mothers, and it's mainly it's mainly the mums I'm talking to. There's so many who are like, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. That's kind of the attitude you get. But what's been amazing, meeting other home educating families and other home educating mums, is it's people from all sorts of backgrounds who are doing this. And there's an interesting writer, his name is John Holt, and he was writing in the 60s and 70s about home educating, and this is over in the US, and he's really very, very pro, because it goes at the child's pace. It goes at kind of, it fits with the needs of the family. And he was absolutely fascinating, because he talked about an example of an immigrant family where the mother spoke no English, but she home educated her kids and learned English alongside her children. And therefore the children are seeing the mother going, do you know what, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to learn. And we're inspired by that. And so you have this really interesting kind of relationship between mother and child, where there is encouragement on both sides. It's actually a very, very very beautiful. It's really, really wonderful to see. So a lot of these mums who say, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it,
Yeah.
I think they can, but it's having the encouragement, and also I suppose their own personal reason to do it. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
But also, look, it means doing something which our whole society discourages, which is
Yes.
giving up the second household income,
Yeah.
and leaving the job markets and being an actual
Yeah.
mother, which
Yes.
is so unusual these days.
It's quite countercultural.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was a conversation that we, between my husband and I, that was something we talked about. It's like, right, this means postponing my glittering return, my glittering return to some sort of career. I don't even know what that means. But I don't have a career, but I have a vocation.
Yeah.
I have a calling. I have a real calling, and that is, at the moment, is to be at home, is to be with the children, and is very much to be keeping this household over. It sounds small, but the reality is, if you have millions upon millions of these little houses with these little keystones of mothers and these little families continuing on, learning quietly and loving quietly, you've got a civilization. Because if you don't have that, it all comes crashing down. So what we are doing is very countercultural. What we are doing as well, by home educating during lockdowns and quietly meeting people and going for walks and doing all sorts of things like that, is also very countercultural. But yeah. But what it means is that the children are going to be okay. The children are going to be all right, and not lost.